In this psychoanalytic critique of Ethan Hawke's version of Hamlet, The Rest is Silence, the ending duel scene and subsequent death scenes were analyzed. These scenes were chosen because they were part of the climax of the story. One of the main focus points were on the last words of Hamlet before his death, because a recurring theme in Shakespeare is that most characters have a final message to give before their death, which provides more opportunity for a psychoanalytic critique.
Well, again. Stay.
Throughout the play, it was clear that Gertrude chose sides between Claudius and Hamlet. For the majority of the play, she chose Claudius. But at the end, when Claudius was trying to poison Hamlet, you can tell by her facial expression that she suspects something is wrong, and you could see in her eyes that her inner loyalty towards her son was fighting against her actions that she has previously done in the past by supporting Claudius.
Another hit, what say you?
This was her conscience fighting itself on protecting her son, even though they don't have the strongest relationship, because she knows that he feels betrayed. This is seen in Hamlet's resistance to her both when she gets up to interrupt Claudius and when she attempts to, quote, wipe his brow.
Hamlet, take my napkin, rub thy brows. The queen carouses to thy fortune, Hamlet.
Even with Hamlet's reluctance, she still drinks the poison to try and save Hamlet as a last act to settle her mind of all the wrongdoing she has done in the past to both Hamlet and dead King Hamlet. Here we see another example of Hamlet's resistance as a result of his feelings of betrayal towards his mother.
One thing to point out is the drastic difference between Claudius's death and Hamlet's death. When Laertes shoots Hamlet, there's blood everywhere, which we see after Laertes pulls away from Hamlet after being shot. Not only is his jacket covered in blood, but also his face. After Laertes shoots himself, the blood from his body spatters onto Hamlet's body, making him appear even bloodier.
Throughout the movie, Hamlet's character is portrayed as a calmer, more analytical person versus the Branagh version, where he was much louder and overdramatic. Because Hamlet was portrayed as a much calmer version of himself in the Ethan Hawke film, the theatricality of his death scene from the slow motion to the dramatic music juxtaposed the quiet composure of Hamlet's character. It seems as though all of Hamlet's pent-up emotions of anger and betrayal towards Claudius and his mother are suddenly released in this explosive way.
In contrast to Hamlet's death, Claudius's death was very anticlimactic. Both Hamlet and Claudius are silent, and while the music is still very dramatic, it focuses solely on these two characters. No one else's reaction is shown while Hamlet is shooting Claudius or when he falls on the ground. While Hamlet's death scene was more dramatic, Claudius's was more intense. Hamlet didn't even hesitate when it came to shooting him. This shows his drive to avenge his father, and that it was more important to him than anything.
Notice how the only trace of blood is on Claudius's hands. This could be symbolism for King Hamlet's murder and how his blood was on Claudius's hands. This connects back to Hamlet's sole focus on avenging his father and getting justice. After Hamlet kills Claudius, he gives his final words to Horatio. In his dying breaths, he tells Horatio some important things.
Horatio, I am dead. Thou livest. Report me and my cause aright to the unsatisfied.
He first says, report me and my cause aright to the unsatisfied. He wants Horatio to tell everyone what happened regarding his father's death and why he murdered Claudius.
And if thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from felicity a while, and
Hamlet also tells Horatio, absent thee from felicity a while. The direct translation from the book is keep yourself from the happiness of death. This is another way of him telling Horatio that he can't kill himself. Earlier in the story, when Hamlet gives his to be or not to be speech, he contemplates the idea of suicide and escaping reality. The happiness of death could be a metaphor for suicide, and Hamlet is telling Horatio that he needs to stay away from it and live to tell his story. This could be, in a way, avenging Hamlet the way that Hamlet avenged his father, a way to get justice for the wrongdoing done to him.
in this harsh world, draw thy breath in pain to tell my story.
When he says, and in this harsh world, draw thy breath in pain to tell my story, he's also telling Horatio that he can't kill himself, and even though Horatio has seen that the world has done nothing but hurt those around him, he needs to tell everyone his story.
In the book, Hamlet had a lot more to say to Horatio, but in the movie, they cut the majority of it out and focused only on a few lines. These few lines that were included all essentially said the same thing, with the main message being for Horatio to stay alive in order to share Hamlet's story. This was his final request to Horatio, and cutting out the majority of the lines left a bigger impact on the scene than it would have if all the lines were included, because it made the message seem that much more important. While Hamlet is giving his last words, a flashback shows playing significant moments he's had with certain people in his life, such as Gertrude, Ophelia, Laertes, and others. Each flashback is quick, and he focuses on one event with each of the featured characters. In the middle of the flashbacks playing, it cuts to a close-up of Hamlet's eye. His eye was moving a bit, and it looks like he was watching all of the scenes happen in front of him. Like the popular phrase says, it was like his life flashed before his eyes, but only specific parts from each person in order to remember the impact they each had on Hamlet's life. It seemed like a reflection and a way to let go of his emotions.
Out of the highlighted characters, Ophelia is shown 3 times more than any of the other characters. Each scene with her is a close-up of her face, and in one of them she's seen kissing Hamlet. It was clear that Ophelia was a very important person to Hamlet, and he cared about her a lot despite his questionable actions. She was one of the only people in his life who didn't turn their back on him, even when he pushed her away and was dealing with the death of his father. She stuck by his side and continued to care for him and his well-being. This flashback is like Hamlet reflecting on certain parts of his life and shows that Ophelia was such an important part of it.
The rest is silence.
Now cracks a noble heart. Good night. Sweet prince. Flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
Throughout the play, it is clear that Hamlet was made out to be seen as an irrational prince who was unfit to ever become king. The image projected onto Hamlet mainly by Claudius never allowed him to express his own emotions, especially when it came to his father's death and his knowledge of Claudius's crime. The final scene was depicted in a suddenly violent way because it was Hamlet's chance to finally let his emotions go and do what he set out to do from the very beginning, which was to avenge his father's murder. The death scenes of Claudius and Hamlet, both being very dramatic, contrasted with Hamlet's dying words as he sits with Horatio. He was very calm when he was speaking to him and seemed at peace. He tells Horatio to tell his story that he can finally be heard the way that he wanted to for so long. Now that he accomplished what he feels he needed to, he can die in peace knowing his story will finally be heard.